Let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Odom. I'm the manager of the Mobile and Air Resources Program in the Air Protection Branch here at Georgia EPD. And today we are here to present an update to the I&M rules to the stakeholders within the I&M program here in Georgia. Here's an outline of our presentation today. We'll start with a brief history of the I&M program in Georgia. We'll mention the current act and the rules that govern our program and talk a bit about the current operations in our program. We'll discuss the changes we intend to make in our program. We'll talk about the proposed timeline for the implementation of these changes. And finally, we'll talk about some of the other items we'll need to consider going forward. There will be time for questions and comments at the end. First, let's start with a little history about our Georgia air quality and our program. Back in 1978, Atlanta was first designated as being in non-attainment of the air quality standards for carbon monoxide, or CO. With this first designation, the city initiated an I&M program in counties that had over 200,000 vehicle registrations. Then, a couple of years later in 1981, EPA required Atlanta to implement a basic I&M program. At that time, the Department of Public Safety, or DPS, operated the basic program in 4 counties: Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Gwinnett. Moving forward, in 1991, EPA designated Atlanta back in attainment for carbon monoxide. However, Atlanta was designated in serious non-attainment for ozone. As you may know, ozone is formed when volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and nitrogen oxides, or NOx, react with sunlight. Gasoline-powered cars can produce VOCs and NOx, particularly when they are not maintained well. In 1996, Georgia adopts the rules for enhanced inspection and maintenance as required by the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. At this point, EPD takes over the program from DPS. The enhanced program is phased in beginning in October 1996. 9 new counties are added to the program: Forsyth, Cherokee, Paulding, Douglas, Coweta, Fayette, Clayton, Henry, and Rockdale, as notated by the green dot in the map on the right of the slide. The slide briefly discusses what governs us. There's the official code of Georgia annotated, Title 12, Chapter 9, Part 40, known as the Georgia Motor Vehicle Emission Inspection and Maintenance Act. This is our authorizing statute or law. The environmental rule that governs us, subject 391-3-20, the Enhanced Inspection and Maintenance Rule. EPD has the authority to change the rule, unlike the act as we had previously discussed. Let's talk about our current I&M program. We'll not discuss the program in its entirety, but we will touch on the parts of the program we intend to change. First, we will mention the types of vehicle emissions tests performed in our program. There's the catalytic converter check that each inspector is required to conduct. Then there's the onboard diagnostic, or commonly called OBD, test done by each inspector, where the OBD connector collects emissions data from the vehicle. And there's the fuel cap pressure test to ensure a proper seal on the fuel tank. Also, the enhanced program requires that EPD conducts on-road remote sensing testing of at least 0.5% of the subject vehicle population, or 20,000 vehicles, whichever is less. We collect the data on an annual basis at various places around Metro Atlanta. Speaking of the subject vehicle population, the vehicles covered in the Georgia I&M program are cars and light-duty trucks between 3 and 24 model years old, powered by gasoline, which includes hybrid vehicles, with a gross vehicle weight rating of 8,500 pounds or less. Now, let's talk about some of the changes we intend to make to our program. First, our intention is to change the classification of the program from enhanced to basic. As you'll recall, Atlanta was designated as serious non-attainment back in 1991. Per the Code of Federal Regulations, 40 CFR 51.350A2, Atlanta was required to have an enhanced program because of the serious classification. On February 25th of 2022, based on 2018 to 2020 ambient monitoring data, Georgia submitted a maintenance plan to be redesignated as having attained the 2015 National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, for ozone. On October 17, 2022, the EPA redesignated Georgia into attainment of the ozone standard. Because of this redesignation, Georgia is no longer required to have an enhanced I&M program. Let me add to this by saying that we have to demonstrate to EPA that the changes we intend to make will not cause Georgia and Metro Atlanta to backslide out of attainment. Our planning and support program is putting together the data to demonstrate to EPA that we will be able to maintain our current status with the changes. We've talked about the three primary types of tests performed. The catalytic converter check and the OBD test will remain unchanged. However, we intend to remove the fuel cap pressure test and simply replace it with a verification that the fuel cap exists. The enhanced program requires an evaporative system function check on the vehicles we test. If we are to move to a basic program, that requirement no longer exists. However, our intentions are to maintain a verification of the presence of a fuel cap as a requirement in lieu of a pressure test. We believe the benefits of this change are that emissions tests will now be more efficient and timely, that the financial burden on stations to have the master caps will be reduced, and the audit list for stations when audits are conducted by Georgia's Clean Air Force will be shorter. The second change we intend to make is to remove the requirement of on-road remote sensing testing. Since the program would no longer be an enhanced program, the requirement for on-road testing would no longer exist. The benefit of this change is that there will be a cost savings for the state, as remote sensing can be rather expensive and does not provide a notable benefit currently to the state. The third change we intend to make is to change the new vehicle model year exemption. Currently, we exempt the most recent 3 model years from testing. Our intention is to expand that exemption to 5 years. Generally speaking, more recent model year cars and light-duty trucks are cleaner, produce less pollution, and have a lower failure rate. The graph on the right side of the screen illustrates that the most recent 5 model years all have a failure rate of less than 5%. The failure rate of vehicles increases after that, but the demonstration here is that model years 4 and 5 have very low failure rates, thus having relatively little impact on pollution in Metro Atlanta. The primary benefits of this change are that this will lessen the burden on the taxpayers of Georgia, not having to obtain emissions tests for 2 additional years on light-duty vehicles. And aggregately, based on 2022 data, a little over 500,000 vehicles would not need to be tested. And based on the average test fee, that would save Georgians collectively $11.2 million. There are other impacts to these changes of which we are mindful. There are potential revenue impacts for I&M station owners, our management contractor, the county tax offices, as well as we at EPD. Those impacts will be directly due to the reduction in the number of tests performed. As you see on the slide, the cost of a certification, or an eCert as it's called, is $4.02 to the station. That eCert cost is shared by the management contractor, the counties, and EPD. Again, the reduction of tests performed will impact the finances of each of those entities. The remainder of the test fee, ranging from $10 to $25 as required by our Act, is retained by the station owners for their operational costs. Additionally, with the potential reduction of vehicles needing repair, both auto repair facilities and auto part sales could be impacted by the reduction of the emission tests conducted. Here's a tentative timeline for implementation. We're currently holding our initial stakeholder meeting today, May 17th. On May 24th, 2023, our initial comments for the stakeholders are received. August 2023, we intend to brief the DNR board on proposed rule changes to 391-3-20. In August or September of 2023, there will be another public comment period and a public hearing. In December of 2023, we will request the DNR board to adopt the proposed rule revisions. And in January of 2024, we intend to submit our final package to EPA for approval. I want to reiterate that these are EPD's current plans. EPA must approve these plans before we are to implement them. EPA can take up to 18 months to approve our plans, so if implementation is to occur, it will likely be several months away at the earliest. Also, EPA is currently considering adjusting the ozone max, currently set at 70 parts per billion. If the standard is lowered, that could impact our ability to make these changes as well. At this time, I will pause for a moment to allow you to indicate that you would like to make a comment, either by raising your hand in Zoom, by using the Zoom chat dialog box, or by pressing *9 if you have joined us on the phone.
Elaine, I unmute. I'm requesting that you unmute and then you can speak with your questions or comments.
I don't have a question. I just want a copy.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. The presentation and a recording of this webinar will be posted on our website, and we will share that link so everyone can have copies of this after we conclude. John Merritt, I will unmute your line and you can speak. John, I am trying to unmute your line, but it is not allowing me to. You are welcome to put your question in the chat or in the Q&A section. You are also to accept when I click unmute, you're supposed to accept it. Michael, he has posted in the Q&A, it says, with Opus taking over the program, will the cert price stay the same?
At this point in time, we do not have any intentions of changing the cert price. I think that's about the extent of what I can say at this point. At this point in time, the certs, we intend to keep them the same.
Okay, I also have another question in the question and answer. What are you guys going to do for the decrease in revenue for station owners?
Yeah, that was, I guess, briefly mentioned earlier that we do recognize that that's going to happen for all station owners as well as our management contractor, and that's something unfortunately we'll all have to work through. When we understand that this will take money out of many of your pockets, and but at the same time, this is something that we feel that we need to do for the taxpayers here in Georgia that have helped us reach attainment. So this is more so with the idea of looking at the public, looking to the public to give them a reward, if you will, for helping us get to attainment. But it does come at a cost, and we do recognize that.
Another question in the chat is, beginning next year, 2023 vehicles will not require emissions tests until 2027. Is that correct?
I'm not certain I understand the question there.
It says beginning next year, 2023 vehicles will not require emissions testing until 2027, question mark.
Oh, okay. I think I understand the question now. At this point in time, we don't know, just because, again, EPA has to approve all of our plans here at this point. It is, if it were to be approved by the end of this year and we were to initiate it next year, see, that would be 2024. So all the vehicles all the way back to 2020 would no longer need to have an emissions test. I do not believe it will happen that quickly, but that's sort of the thought process, at least. So if by 2027 would 2023 vehicles no longer need tests, I would venture a guess that if this does pass, yes, that will be the case. But again, we still need EPA to approve this.
Ali, I will unmute your line and you can ask your question.
I have hello, good afternoon. I have two-part question. One, about the catalytic converter. While the OBD system is checking the system and including the catalytic converter, why do we have to visually check the converter? The second part about the inflation. How come the inflation affect the repairing the car, which is from 1996, which was about $220, all the way today, which is over $1,000, which is 5 times more. Why the fee for emission stays the same, even lower? Why don't they make it higher or make it fixed for everybody the same price? Thank you.
I can answer the second question first. The fees that are charged are that is set into the act, and we at EPD do not have control over that. That's a minimum of $10 and a maximum of $25. That is set unless the law were to change. I forget the first question. I apologize.
The first question about catalytic converter, why the OBD system check the converter itself? Why do we have to visually look at it again? If the catalytic converter is not there, the system will recognize it and turn on the engine light and put a code in the system. Why do we have to check it again?
Yeah, technically speaking, that's just a part of our rules right now. That is something that we could look into in the future as far as removing a rule change because I do agree with you that it is something that is checked through OBD. So, I mean, at this point, it's simply a part of the rules that is something we can look into and make a change in the future. Yes.
Okay. The other part, I have a question about recertification. When we get our recertification, always the time that, for example, if we are our certificate expire in August, we get a test today. Why don't they continue from August and after that they reduce it from the day that we get the test? So always 2 or 3 months we lose from our certification time, and it's more expenses for you guys too, and wasting our time too and losing time. While we were already certificate until August, now we take 2 months earlier, we lose 2 months.
I will open it up to anybody at EPD that's able to answer that question. Unfortunately, I don't think I understand it.
Okay. Do you want me to rephrase it for you?
If you could send that, if you could put that in the chat, or if you want to contact me later via email, feel free to do so. I'd love to try to help you, but I do not understand your question, unfortunately.
Do you have a phone number or email address? I can write it down.
Absolutely. Yes, my phone number is 470-524-0535. And I'll have that at the end of the presentation here.
Thank you.
Michael,
Yes.
this is Steve. I think what he's saying is if they go into recertification prior to their license expiring, he's worried that they lose the 2 months between them applying and then when his license expires, the certificate expires, versus just adding the 24 months on to the end of the current expiration date.
Okay. Okay.
I believe that's what he's asking about.
Okay. Yeah, that will be a question better suited outside of this forum here. So feel free to give me a call, please. Thank you.
Another question in the chat is, will the price cap go up for the price of emissions?
Again, that is that's in our act at this point in time. So at this point, we do not anticipate that. I can mention the fact that there was a House bill that was proposed at the very end of the legislative session this past year that wish to eliminate both the minimum and maximum of the fees that are charged for emissions tests, the $10, $25 minimum and maximum. That has not been voted on yet. So at this point in time, there's no anticipated changes for that. However, that is something that I keep an eye on, I guess, for next legislative period. And if that were to change, if that bill were to pass and we were to implement that into law, then that is something that would change then. But again, that may be years down the road before that happens.
Another question in the chat are there any plans to add Hall or Dawson counties as their populations have increased tenfold since the last time the program was expanded?
At this point in time, no, there's no intention to expand the counties.
Richard Chesser, I'm going to unmute your line and you can speak.
You got me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I talked to Michael a few weeks ago. I've had several 18, 19, and 20 models failing, especially since a lot of the cars and trucks now have the turbos on them. These turbos are malfunctioning at some of them at 30,000 miles, some less. And I just don't understand why they would consider quit testing when there is some failing. And also, I don't understand, I've never understood why we quit testing them at 25 years old. There's more and more late 90s on the road now than there was back when we was doing the 80 models. Because of fuel injection, these cars are running a lot longer. And about half the people on their last test, when they leave here, they say they're going to go cut their catalytic converter off and going to keep driving them every day. And we're not even testing them anymore. So they're really being gross polluters there. And I also wonder why we hadn't never tested diesels. These diesels are blowing out more smoke and fumes than the gas vehicles appear to be.
Yeah, I'll try to handle this in three parts there. The act requires that all antique vehicles, which is considered 25 model years or older, to be exempt from the program. So that unfortunately that's a hard line on the back end there that we are unable to change unless the law were to change. Yeah, from an exemption standpoint, yeah, basically, yeah, I think I demonstrated at least from a statistical standpoint, from what we've seen so far, that we don't notice that the 4 and 5 year old vehicles fail quite as much. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking into adding those 2 years onto our exemptions. And as far as diesel goes, to my understanding, there's just not enough of a diesel population for us to factor into the air pollution here in Georgia. So that's something that we've looked into at this point in time. And maybe something if hopefully our quality will not get worse, but if it does, then that would be something we may consider at that point in time. But at this point, that is not a part of our consideration.
So if you're going to implement with the EPD about cutting out 2 years, why could you also not ask them about leaving the year models we're doing on there and keep testing these older ones and quit eliminating them at 25 years old?
Right. Again, that's actually part of our act, and that would require a lawmaker to change it. So that's something that EPD has control over, unfortunately.
Another question in the chat is, hello, my name is Darius. I wanted to know, will there be any change to the minimum number of certs that can be purchased? And if not, is it at all possible?
Darius, that's not something we've considered at this point in time. I don't anticipate there being any changes in that. Maybe something we may look into in the future, but at this point in time, that's not being considered.
The next question is it possible for you guys to mandate testing prices at $25 for all stations in the 13 counties?
Again, the $10, $25 minimum maximum is something that's mandated by our act. So if the act were to change, we we could change it at that point in time. And at this point in time, there does not appear to be a mandate for that, or user appetite to mandate that.
William Grimm, I will unmute your line and you can speak. William, can you speak? We can't hear you. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat and I will read it aloud. Next question in the chat is, not all Georgians participate in testing, so technically you are only benefiting a few counties of taxpayers. The impact of the 5-year exemption is going to put some small businesses out of business. So why are you penalizing business owners and employees of income while only benefiting a small group of taxpayers, a $20.38 a year?
Again, there's I guess there's 550,000 taxpayers that we'd actually be helping there. I mean, it's again, we understand the impact that it's going to have on business owners, and it's
Okay, next question in the chat. Are you requiring fuel cap tests for 2017 and newer? We have received a failed audit on cars that are newer than 2017, so we are confused.
I think that's a question that's sort of outside of the scope of this particular meeting, but feel free to give me a call or send me an email with that question. Be happy to answer that. And I'll have my information here at the very end.
Gary Moore, I will unmute your line and you can speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I have 2 questions. I may have missed these questions may have been asked prior. I may have stepped away. With these changes, does that say that the cost of the certs will remain the same at $4.02?
For the time being, yes, that is the intention.
Okay. All right. There was also an issue with the Ford issue, the Fords. I'm going to say the Escape and so on and so forth. I don't know if that was addressed also, but my location, my volume is pretty high. In order for me to do these cars and for 5 minutes, leave them off and so on and so forth, it's just not productive because, of course, I've got a line normally. With that being said, have they made any adjustments in reference to the Ford vehicles that we're having difficulties with?
Michael, I can maybe handle that.
Okay.
It's our understanding that Ford has a reprogramming that they can do. The vehicle would have to go back to the dealership to do that. That obviously is not part of this rulemaking, but the Keep Alive module is the issue with those particular Ford vehicles, and they do have a bulletin that can assist your motorist with that.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand this. So I'm telling my motorist what? Of course, I've tried it on a number of occasions, and unsuccessfully. With that being said, I understand that there's a few shops that have been able to do it. I don't know if that's attributed to the type of equipment or manufacturer or what that's attributed to, but I was certainly unable to do it. I've had customers come in earlier than my posted hours so that I could do them without any interruptions, but to no avail.
If you want to discuss this more, you can drop us a note, because this really is outside of the scope of
Okay.
this rulemaking.
Okay, all right. And could you address the cost of certs? They're gonna remain at $4.02?
Yes, that's the intention at this point in time. Yes.
Okay, and one last question, gentlemen. Now, I was having issues with the Hyundais, and this may not be outside the scope of our meeting. Issues with the Honda gas caps. Was that addressed in this meeting? Because I'm still, some of them will pass, some of them will fail. Do I not test them at all? Or I know there were certain years that we were supposed to omit, but I'm still having difficulties with them.
Yeah, that's sort of outside the scope of this meeting. If you want to give me a call or send me an email regarding that, and I'll be happy to address it. But going forward, if we are to pass, get this past EPA and make these changes, the fuel cap requirement to do a pressure test will go away. But that, again, maybe years down the road, and that's if EPA approves it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Next question in the chat. Why don't we have to test Hyundai and Kia 2010 and newer gas caps when it is a very important part of the emission test? Okay, I'll move to the next one. Just today, there was a news story from CNN which stated that we could breach the 1.5C climate threshold by 2027. Why would we not do everything possible to prevent this instead of changing the program just because we have met a minimum standard?
I think the best way to answer that is here in Georgia. We have our air quality standards that we have to maintain. We've reached those air quality standards according to EPA. We're going to do everything we can to maintain where we are, while at the same time sort of ensuring that the taxpayers here in Georgia are protected with the air, as well as not increasing any burdens on them as well. So that's we feel here we are doing what we can possible to keep the air quality here in Georgia in attainment with all the standards.
Next one in the chat is, did you say we will no longer have to do fuel cap tests?
Potentially. Again, if EPA approves this, yes, that's our intention to do away with that, since that will not be part of that's not part of the basic program. It's only a part of the enhanced program, which we are trying to get away from effectively.
Next question is, you didn't answer my question. Why is saving taxpayers $20.38 a year more important than saving businesses in 13 counties and employee income, not to mention the income for the state?
It's one of those things that I don't know how to best answer that. That is it's a question that it's one of those unfortunate things that I think there's a reason why I didn't answer the question, because I don't know that I have an answer for you. It's other than that's our intentions are to look out for the taxpayers here in Georgia. We do not wish to implement these implement any hardships on the small businesses. And
next comment is, can you explain the difference between the I&M law legislature versus I&M rules EPD?
yeah, the law is something that's actually implemented by the lawmakers. You know, they have to pass bills through the House and the Senate, and then those and then once those pass, they're actually written into law, and that's something that we at EPD do not have any jurisdiction to change. We do have these specific rules that if you've gone through the program, you get a copy of the rule book, and those are the rules that are governed just for EPD. And we do have the ability to change those. Now, we have to follow the laws when we implement the rules. So the rules are based off of the law, if that makes any sense. If anyone else can help me explain that a little bit better than I just did, feel free to jump in. But that's.
Well, I would say that the act or the law is the enabling legislation for us to have a program. And the rules are the minutia, is how the program is carried out, put forth. We as EPD can modify the rules as needed without actually changing the law. So the rules are an ongoing ongoing way of making the program work for us. But the act, the law, enables us to have the rules that give us the minutiae, what the requirements are that get modified from time to time, as we're trying to do right now.
Next person with their hand raised is Gideon. I'm going to unmute your line and you can speak.
Yeah, it is not clear for me. One of the component part of the emission test is the gas cap. So I guess it is not clear for me when it was supposed to be, every car has to be tested, but we are told to terminate, 2010 and the older on Hyundais and the Kias. That has to be very clear. And my opinion, the gas cap test is one of the very important part of the emission. Just don't understand why we have, it was supposed to be tested. Even when we are buying new cars, most of the time when we are testing new cars, sometimes the gas cap are defective. Most of the failures comes from the gas caps. So I want that part to be explained very clearly. Thank you very much.
To make sure I'm not certain I understand the question. Are you saying that you feel that we should not be eliminating the gas caps? Am I understanding what you're saying correctly?
What I mean is gas cap has to be tested, that is my own opinion. You know, the gas cap is one of the very important part of integral emission test. That is what I'm saying.
Okay, you cut out there for about 5 seconds. I apologize. I did not pick up on a lot of what you just said there.
I'm saying, you want me to repeat?
If you
So
could,
what I'm
that would be great. Yeah.
What I'm saying, 2010 and newer Kia and Hyundai's, the gas cap we has not to be tested. You know when it's supposed to be tested, and to my opinion, is one and very important part. Emission test is the gas cap. You know, you have to consider that part. What I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, next, do we want to move on?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, next, in the chat says, what do you mean that there is no mandate to raise the prices? You've already regulated the price to be between $10 and $25. You've already regulated the price. Why can't you send it again for approval? We would like a mandatory price hike. This just makes sense since we're going back 5 years now on testing, and this will dramatically decrease our bottom lines. What must we do in order to get this price to $25 or even $30?
Yeah. Once again, that is mandated by the act. I think the best thing for me to tell you to do is maybe reach out to your local legislator, whether it be a representative or a state senator. Like again, there's a bill that was put on the books this year that would eliminate the minimum and maximum there. If that's something you would like to see happen, I think that may be your best avenue there to reach out to your local representative or state senator to see if they would bring that bill up again next year in the legislative session and see if they can get it passed. That's not something we at EPD can dictate, but your lawmaker certainly can.
Okay, next comment in the chat is, when you eliminate the gas cap test, is there a way to reduce the amount of cars that fail so that the lower fail rate can be used to later decrease more years or eliminate the program altogether? If we really believe in climate change, we should be doing more, not less.
I mean, the gas cap test is the idea behind that is basically to sort of expedite the test. It's something that we won't no longer be required to do, but we do want to keep the gas cap verification to keep the gas cap there. We believe we'll be able to still, even with just the presence of a gas cap, be able to eliminate a good bit of pollution as opposed to there not being a gas cap at the vehicle at all for those vehicles that still have gas caps at this time.
John Merritt, your hand is raised. I will unmute your line and you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My first statement is the gas cap thing should have went away a long time ago, because if the gas cap's not on the car, it's going to throw the light eventually anyway. We've all had a pass cap fail during, calibration. We know that system's not right. But here's where I'm confused though, is you say we had a station person, somebody asked earlier, could you take it back beyond 25 years? Not a great idea, but it does ask the question. You said you couldn't do that because it's law, but you can shave 3 off the front, but yet you can't change the price. We're already dealing with everything we do costs more. Now, unbeknownst to us, you've worked behind our back to take 3 model years away, and now telling us we can't go up, even though my machine costs more. Just the actual cost of renting it went up. I honestly thought it was a freaking lease agreement, but oh well. So I guess, and then also nobody's even mentioned the advent of electric cars, which is taking money out of our pocket as well. It just seems like to me, with everything going up, someone should have took the time to write in here, hey, this is going to be an issue, or got with us before all this stuff was a done deal and you're going to submit it, because you obviously have more leeway than you're telling us, because you can shave 3 years off the front, but you can't add 3 years to the back, which you shouldn't. That's a dumb idea. But it seems like to me you could also do something with the pay, whether it's law or an act or whatever. If you can change the time frame of the 25 years, you should be able to change the amount of money being taken. All our credit card fees have gone up, and now we're having to pay more there. And it's cutting us. It's cutting us to the point where for some of us it may not be worthwhile, which again is going to cause the end user more time and issue. And speaking of time and issue, can we get rid of 2-speed idle tests? They're freaking pointless. You have the data you need. If it works or not. Why are we still having to waste our gas on that and make the customer get out of the car just for that? All right, I'm done.
In regards to the 2-speed idle test, those are tests that we implement just to basically ensure that the program is doing what we believe is doing from an OBD standpoint. It's basically an extra check. So that's something we only do randomly, and it's done very infrequently. So I'm hoping that won't be too much of a burden going forward on the station owners. I don't know whether I'm forgetting some of the other questions that or points that were brought up. If there's anything that it needs to be addressed there, that at least that hasn't already been addressed.
No, it was just, I don't understand why you can move the dates, but you can't move the dollar amount.
Well, again, the dollar amount is, for starters, not everyone charges $25. There's the range, and if everyone charges closer to the top end, then there may be that we may have a something to go on there. However, again, that is the I&M Act. That is what our lawmakers set, and that's something that
the lawmakers, though, did they not set the time frame? Did the lawmakers not set the 25 years?
They did set 25 years. Yes, that is actually part of the act. So but
you can edit that, but not the other.
Well, yeah, the
y'all
exemption
didn't include it in this.
The exemption is something that we have the ability to adjust, and that's what we intend to adjust going from 3 to 5 years. That is okay. That is not part of the act. That is part of our rules that we are giving the exemption.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a little more sense. I appreciate it.
Okay. No problem.
Next question in the chat: what is the likelihood of this being approved by EPA, and what is a reasonable time frame to expect these changes to take effect?
You want to take that one, Anna?
Absolutely. I was going to suggest that. So my group handles submitting the rules to EPA that we get adopted by the DNR board. And typically, once we submit those, which our plan right now is to submit our final package to EPA in January, it takes 18 months for them to up to 18 months to approve it. Can they approve it in 6 months? Yes, but they usually have to be motivated to do that. And so it just really depends, but they can take up to 18 months to approve our updates. So we would be looking that if we submitted in January of 2023, that it would be June, July of 2020. No, if we submit in January of 2024, I'm sorry, then it would be June or July of 2025 at the latest that these would be approved.
Yeah, again, this is not something that we're looking to implement immediately. This will be down the road, but we wanted to give you guys the heads up that this is what we intend to do today.
And there's another question that's along the same lines, that if everything is working fine and you guys are changing from 3 to 5 years for the new vehicles, I think it says, I think he meant when are you guys changing,
Or why are you guys changing? Is yeah.
or why?
Um,
Oh, why you guys are changing.
Yeah, and once again, it's basically to give the taxpayers a little bit of a break and have them not have to get vehicles tested before they really truly need to. As I believe I demonstrated with the graph that we had earlier, that the failure rate for the 4 and 5 year vehicles is very low, just like the first 3 vehicles. So we feel that there's going to be very little impact on the air if we add if we add those 2 years onto the exemption.
All right, this next one is along the lines of timing. As the person said, I missed the part about expanding the newer model year expansion, and when would it happen? Please elaborate. So this would not be able to take effect until EPA adopted it. So that's what we were talking about, that it would be summer of 2025 before these changes go into effect. The rules will be updated, but the I&M program will not be able to enforce them until EPA approves all of it. Next question. Why are you considering 5 years or newer and not 8 years or newer, when many studies show that vehicles 10 years or newer are passing inspections regularly, and many states have either removed altogether or moved to 8 years or newer?
This is the other side of that coin. There, it's yeah, we're trying to implement baby steps in terms of the expansion of this. If we feel if we went too many years, that may not be something the EPA would go along with. So we're just going to attempt to go 2 years at this point in time, as opposed to expanding the exemption another 5 years and go to 8 years.
Next question is, so does this mean that if this bill passes, then starting January 2024, we will be testing for cars 2019 and before? And again, that's right on the same line that we just answered of, it will be summer 2025 before this will take effect. Most likely.
Right. Yeah, the answer to that question is yes, but it would be very unlikely that it would start by January 2024. So.
Next question. You say that you're trying to look out for taxpayers. At what point did that become the responsibility of an agency that is supposed to protect the environment? We are told on a daily basis that fixing the environment today will save taxpayers more in the future.
Our goal is to maintain the environment as best we can. We feel we've done a really good job of maintaining the environment as we have here. So it's this is again what I mentioned, a sort of giving back to the taxpayers. Our intention is to maintain what we have now too. We do not want to backslide out of the attainment of the standards that we've reached. So while we are looking out for the taxpayers, our goal is to protect the environment going forward as well. And we feel that what we're doing here is going to have very little impact on what we do environmentally going forward.
Errol Cantor, I'm sorry if I do not pronounce your name correctly. You have raised your hand. I will unmute your line and you can speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, the first question I have is when this program started in 1996, wasn't it just a flat $25 fee and there was no price adjustment possible until they changed that at a later date?
I can address that, Michael. When the program started in 96, it was $10 to $25. And then when the dynamometers were being rolled out between 97 and 98, there was an emergency rule to set the fee at $25. So those stations who were investing in the ASM program wouldn't be undercut grossly by those who are not. At the end of that period, the emergency rule went away, and then it went back to $10 to $25. A couple of years after that, the discounting began, and so the average fee right now is in the neighborhood of $20.62.
Is that in the law, or is that part of the EPD rules part? In other words,
When that took place, EPD had the authority to make an emergency rulemaking on behalf of the program to make sure the program would stay viable during the transition or the addition of the ASM. So the entire, the board had to vote on that, and it was just for 1 year, if I remember.
so they do have the possibility of being able to institute an emergency rule in order to change that program, in order to change this. If you could change it at one point, that also means that you can change it back at another point. If you deem that that was a viable and necessary part of it. It seems to me, and I'm just going to make a comment here, that all the station owners who invested in equipment and set up businesses and so forth like that, you were anxious to get everybody into the system from the taxpayer standpoint so that they would have less time to worry about sitting at emission stations, and time is as valuable as a few dollars is in a price. And now it seems to me that EPD's emphasis, and to a person that asked the question before, that is it an EPD mandate that they try to save taxpayers money, or are they worried about the environment where they should be, instead of worrying about the financial condition of all the taxpayers and saving them $2 or $3 per test here, when the station owners costs have probably doubled in that period of time, that EPD is throwing the station owners under the bus now that they've achieved everything that the rest of us that are testing and have testing stations have made it possible to do. And it seems like there's very, very little consideration on EPD's part in order to try to help that situation. And of course, there's going to be a lot of closures, which are going to affect the people and customers and their time. And if they have to sit in an emission station in a line, because instead of the amount of emission stations, you may go down to only half the emission stations because it won't be a viable business in order to continue. So I've got all that to say. There's a lot more involved here than just trying to save the taxpayers a couple of dollars. I think that's a cop-out. And if you have the ability to have changed the rule from the initial $25, because we had to buy dyno equipment at the time, which I'm one of the station owners that did that, and set up a business, and we have employees that need to work. And what about those people who are going to lose their jobs in the effect? How is it going to affect them? I think that it's a very short-sighted way of looking at it. And I would like to know your comments of it.
Well, I think one thing that probably is probably fair to bring up here is that from the way I understand it, there is a push in certain legislatures to get rid of the program altogether, and that's something we do not want to do at all. We're doing everything we can to try to keep the program going as best we can. So one of the things we want to do is while it's a balance we're having to try to make certain that we do everything we can to keep the environment as clean as we possibly can, but to sort of also satisfy not only the taxpayers but our current legislatures as well, to try to give back a little bit to those people while doing everything we can to ensure that we maintain the air quality standards we've talked about here.
Well,
So,
is it a mandate for EPD to be worried about saving the taxpayers' money? I mean, is that
no.
is that part of what EPD is about? Is that what
No,
they're charged with?
It's not, to your point. No, it's not. But at the same time, we're also trying to do everything we can to.
Or is it just something to make you all look good? I mean, let's call it what it is. It's like, if that's not what your mandate is to save taxpayers money, if your mandate is to clean up the air and so forth like that, then why not just stick to that? Why go that extra mile to worry about a taxpayer, whether they're going to pay an average of 20 point something cents or $25 in order to help the people that are actually making the program work? It seems like EPD is coming out on the side of themselves rather than worry about the whole integrity of the whole process. In order to have a program that works, you need both sides to be working together in order to make something that's sustainable and worthwhile. And this is a one-sided deal. When you needed us to come into the program, and you needed us to make the investments in all the dyno equipment, and when you needed to have all the stations open and for us to rent the equipment and so forth like that, then that was one thing. But now that you've achieved your ends, now you're throwing it to the other side, and you're trying. Let's call it what it is. The amount of a couple of dollars here or there is insignificant as far as the taxpayer is concerned. They go out and they pay, the price of a gallon of milk has gone up double, and they have to absorb that. I mean, the fact that once a year they're going to have an emission test, which is going to cost them $3 more to make it a mandatory $25, is really a non-issue, and it's not doing anything for EPD other than making you all look good or look like you're doing something for the public, which in the end isn't going to work anyway, because if the amount of test stations is less, and a person has to sit online for an extra 30 minutes in order to get their car tested, was the 30 minutes worth the $5? I can tell you that from my situation, if the emission station across the street from me has 3 cars in line and I have 6 cars in line, and they're $1 or $2 more, they're going over there anyway. So they're not really concerned about the extra couple of dollars. It just seems like you're making a point that really isn't valid. I mean, in the real world, that kind of thing is kind of a ridiculous way of thinking. And I just have to say that. And it's like, again, you're throwing the people under the bus for some kind of outcome that created the better situation for the air quality that we have. And I guess that's what I have to say. I just have to voice and tell you the way I see it.
Well, certainly appreciate your comments here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a Zoom user that has raised their hand and would like to speak. I will unmute your line.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, my comments were similar to the last person that spoke. And it makes me think that it was not taken in consideration that places are going to close down and go out of business, which makes lines longer, which makes customers unhappy, which means there's going to be more complaints that you're going to have to deal with because of a shortage. And also, I've been testing cars since about 2001, I think. And of course, I've driven, I've used dynos, I've done just about everything that's been thrown at us with this emissions program. And everybody has bought into it and participated with these type of changes. It's obviously going to hurt the industry because, as the gentleman stated earlier, prices going up, but our prices remain the same. It also makes me really wonder that all of this time we have been taught that the gas caps are creating pollution problems, and we are trying to test as many cars as we can to keep it all as clean as we possibly can. And that's why we're doing the 13 county areas out of 159 counties in this state. I am really beginning to wonder, is any of this information true? You know, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, just hearing about the gas caps now and global warming and all of that, it just makes me wonder that is this something we were doing? When I say we, as this program or the government, was raising money to accomplish a goal, and now that it's accomplished, they're going to slowly phase it out. It is very frustrating to hear the changes that are being made, and they are not really being made in favor of the people who's put in the hard work.
Yeah, we understand and appreciate your comments there.
Okay, next comment in the chat. You guys have raised costs for zero air bottles, raised costs for Opus machines, at least, and now you guys are cutting inspection years. Our cost as a small business owner has increased and income opportunities are decreasing. Is the long game simply to stop testing altogether? And how much is politics involved here?
I don't think I can speak to the cost for zero air bottles or the Opus machines. We've talked about the inspection years that we're cutting and why we're cutting them. Is the long game to stop testing altogether? I don't know if I'm capable of speaking to that right now. As I think I've mentioned already, I think there is a push within certain factions of our legislatures that would like to see it go away. We've had neighboring states that have had I&M programs go away. I think Tennessee just removed their program within the last few years. That's something we certainly don't want to do here for several reasons. In particular, just that we just got back into attainment of the next standards. We want to maintain that attainment status. So we intend to keep the program here for as long as we need to. I don't know if I can speak much past these next few years, but we certainly intend to keep the program here. But we, as we've mentioned today here, we're just going to make a few changes to it to try to sort of play both sides of it, try to do whatever we can to keep our legislators from wanting to push to get rid of the program altogether, as well as trying to ensure that the air maintains its current air quality standards.
Joel Cheek, you have indicated you would like to speak. I will unmute your line. Joel, if you see the request to unmute, it should
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you hear me now? Okay,
Yes,
so,
we can.
okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk. I would like to comment on the cost of this as well, just to get my 2 cents in. Plus, I want to ask a question about the software. And regarding the cost, I have to admit that I think there's been a serious miscalculation on this whole thing regarding the cost. And Michael, all apologies, your last response, you said you didn't know anything about the machine. Well, the machine has gone up in price. I mean, that's really half the whole thing. The operators have to have a lot of fixed costs. They have to pay people. They have to pay to train people, send them off to training, got to recertify our station. I moved my station, and for the 3 months while I was waiting for EPD to approve me, I had to pay lease of $480. I don't know what it is, $480 a month for 3 months with zero income from that. We have to buy the certs 200 at a time. That's how many I have to purchase. I don't make any money on this at all. I'm doing this because it's part of my auto repair business. But I don't have any problem with the 5 years or giving the taxpayer money back, but you've got to consider the other half of it, which is all the operators out there who've invested money, who've created a business, who've got this thing going, who have expenses that are going up while sounds like the income is going to go down. So I'm sensing a revolt on this. I mean, for me, I'm losing money on it, but I'll probably continue to lose money. But when these other people go out of business, I'll have more business to lose money on. So you got to go back. I don't think you can do in my opinion, I wouldn't do anything with the state until I got this situation of the revenue for the stations figured out. We've been doing $25 for as long as I can remember. It seems like back in the 80s, was it? Or however long it's been since we've been doing this. Inflation's gone up double since about year 2002. We should be doing $35 in my opinion, and we should have the price more equal to like $25 to $35 across the board. So I really urge you to go back and go to bat for the station operators to at least consider that they invested a lot of money on this, and what it seems like to them is you're taking money out of their pockets. So that's my 2 cents on that. I think it's a severe miscalculation. You really need to go back and look at it. Now, regarding the software, just having a manufacturing background, going through that software, there's a lot of redundant steps in there. It just seemed like there's like 3 steps to tell me that I'm going to use my finger to put it into the machine. We already know that. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that there's a push button on the car, and that, if you got a push button start, push this extra step in the computer program to tell me, hey, if it's a push button, you've got to do the right things. We all know that. So I would like to see I've been wanting that for about 6 years, to have the program cleaned up so there's not as many steps. So at least the throughput of the operators that are left, they can get the cars through there quicker, and maybe it'll be a little bit less burden on them. And I guess the third thing is, if we're not going to do the tailpipe test any longer, theoretically, we don't need about half the stuff on our machine. Seems like there'd be a less expensive machine for us to lease. It's because, the one we have now, you've got the probe, they got to test the probes, they got the gas cans. I don't know what the gas cans would be used for if we're not doing tailpipe things, but I can't tell you when the last time we did a tailpipe thing. So it seems like a big waste to come out every month and calibrate it when we do zero tailpipes. Okay, that's my 2 cents. I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Next question in the chat. We're not talking about the taxpayers in Georgia, only those in 13 counties. So these changes don't impact the majority. Has anyone researched economic impact on the already poor economy in the Atlanta area, not to mention the possible recession the country is facing? The more people out of work, the more it affects the economy.
Yeah, the only thing we've done here, basically, we've looked at the impact it's going to have with all of the entities there, which includes the station owners, but it also is going to have an impact on our management contractor, on the counties, as well as us at EPD. And those are adjustments that we're all going to have to make with these changes that we intend to make. In particular, the expansion of the exemption, if it is allowed.
Next question in the chat is, if this new act is implemented in January, does that mean that the 2020s will then be exempt, even though they are currently part of the testing program?
That would be correct if it were to be implemented in 2024. I don't anticipate that happening. It would depend on how quickly EPA moves, as Anna and I have mentioned before. But to answer that particular question is yes. However, I don't know that it will come to fruition that way.
I'm gonna read through the comments are in the chat and just make sure if there's any new ones that we have not already answered. We will take all of these back and make sure that we have all of them so that we can and see if there's anything that we need to address. One that's different, the certification for emission stations is 2 years. As we decide to open new or recertify stations, a business plan is in play. That business plan is based on the current I&M model. What problems do you foresee for the EPD should you change the business model mid-certification?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, if things were to change mid-certification, like as of right now, I don't know if I foresee anything. If the question is for the EPD, I don't foresee a whole lot of changes for us, and we'll need to make changes from a economic standpoint for ourselves. For the stations, one of the reasons why we're doing this today is the fact that we actually have it's probably going to be a year and a half, 2 years before this actually is implemented. So hopefully mid-certification for the stations, they will have they'll be able to create a new business model going forward. I would hope at this point. That's again one of the reasons why we're having this today. This is not going to be something that's going to be implemented instantly. It's going to take some time for it to eventually be implemented, and now that you understand that this is what our plans are, hopefully you can make adjustments as we go.
Another question is, when you say you're taking baby steps, does that mean that you have plans to eliminate more years in the near future?
We don't have plans for that at this point in time, no.
One statement is, I believe EPD is doing this to help save the I&M program from it going away altogether, like it has in all of our neighboring states.
And that is hopefully a point that I've been able to make here. But yes, that is one of the things we are trying to do. That is correct. Yes.
Another question is, has there been a study to see how the impacts of these changes will affect the program? There have been some pretty truthful points being brought to light.
As far as the impacts of these changes, are we talking from an environmental standpoint, or are we talking?
It just says impacts. It doesn't clarify, so I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, that's part of the demonstration we have to make to EPA that these changes, how it will affect the our air quality, or at least what our anticipations are for the air quality. So we believe that these changes will have a relatively minimal impact, and we'll be able to maintain our status of attainment. But that's what we're talking about from an environmental standpoint.
Hey, Michael, this is Steve Allison. I'm the manager of our planning and support program. And I just wanted to jump in here and say you've done a good job of mentioning that demonstration, but I wanted it for the benefit of folks to know that when we do the demonstration for EPA, it's a really not only detailed but in-depth demonstration. We take a lot of data, we take a lot of information that comes from many trusted sources. That information is then used to do very complex modeling and calculations that go into determining what the impact is on the pollution in Atlanta and what that impact might be. So, I mean, I wanted to maybe sort of underscore that is when we do that that substantiation for EPA, it's a very in-depth substantiation with modeling and everything else. And it's not simple, it's not quick, and it's not taken lightly. So just wanted to tell folks that a lot of consideration work goes into that impact assessment.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that.
I have Ali, who has indicated with their hand raised. I will unmute your line and you can speak.
Hello again. I have two more questions about the recertification of technician and emission station. While we are doing the same thing and we are the same station, why do we have to do it every 2 years? We have to recertificate. Why don't we get it to 5 years? And also we get all the new information through gas messages. So there's nothing else new that we need to go get recertification, and the station is the same. Why do we have to do it every 2 years? And also we are taxpayer too. We are taxpayer. Why don't you consider the inflation in our prices? You're not going to raise the prices. Why don't you consider the inflation? Inflation has gone up, as I mentioned earlier. The waiver that it was supposed for the repair of the vehicle in 1996 was about $220. Now it's over $1,000, 5 times higher. But our price is still the same. When you send our technician to get a certification, we have to pay for the time that he's leaving the job, going to the class or taking the test. Then you send us to the lawmaker, call that lawmaker that changed the price. That's not true. That's not right. You are changing everything else, but you are not able to change the price or add the inflation that our price goes by the inflation. Inflation increase, our price should be increased, or make it $25 even or more. Right now we are losing money even with $25. Thank you.
Okay. The one thing I'll add to that is at this point in time, we do not intend to raise the ESERT price either. So that's we intend to keep that at $4.02 for the time being as well. So that's the direct cost for the station owners to us. And again, as I've mentioned before, the $10 to $25 that is set by law at this point in time. And as I mentioned, there is a potential bill out there that could eliminate that minimum and maximum, but that still has to be passed through the legislature, and that won't happen for at least another year. So.
One question in the chat that is a different line of question is, if it is implemented, what steps station owners will have to take, like recertification and equipment?
Nothing to my knowledge off the top of my head that would need to change from that. Everything else will be handled mostly at our level of EPD. I don't believe that the program in and of itself will not change much at all. The one thing you would not have to deal with is if the gas cap pressure test goes away, you'll no longer need to actually have the master gas caps on hand anymore. And so that's, I don't know if that's a big cost for you or anything, but that's one of the things that would go away that you wouldn't need to do. But I'm unless someone else can think of something that I'm not thinking of right now, I don't think there's many steps the station owners would need to take once this gets implemented.
Michael, if you will, some of the things that initiated we can do at this point from our end, as far as the fuel cap test, as far as testing the newer and older vehicles, that's also something we can set at our end. So there's no software required right now to make any of these changes. However, we are looking into addressing some of the issues that were brought up earlier about shortening the test and doing away with certain screens. So we are actually looking at that, but we want to make sure this all gets encompassed, whatever form this particular change takes place in the rules, and incorporate that in the next software version.
Thanks, Steve.
Another question in the chat was, has the projected population growth of Georgia been taken into consideration?
Not specifically. I mean, we are aware that our program generally expands by 3% every year. So, which I think that at least closely follows the actual population growth that we have here in Georgia. So we're aware of that, but I don't know that I would say that we've necessarily taken it into consideration per se. But we do while we are taking off those 2 years, the program will continue to expand. We expect, so while the cars are going away, initially the universe of cars that we'll need to test should continue to grow as the population grows.
Okay, that is my last unique question. We'll remind everyone that every question that was submitted, we will take back and take a look at everything. Michael has shared his contact information where you can send in any additional comments or questions, and we will take questions through next week. What was the date that we stated?
May 24th. So it'll be next
24th. So yes, we'll take any of your comments or concerns through May 24th and take those into consideration as we look at this rulemaking process. If anyone else would like to make a comment or raise their hand, please do so right now. Okay, Jenny has raised her hand. I will unmute your line.
I just have a question about the recertification for the emissions inspectors. When we take that test, we have to answer questions about how important the gas cap is to the test. So are those questions going to be rewritten or taken out of the testing? Because we've been trained to think that the gas cap is the culprit for, a good portion of the emissions problem.
Right, and that's a good point there. Thank you for your question. I do believe that's something we're going to have to look into going forward, is to readjust what we test and readjust the training. So that's something we'll work on with our management contractor going forward. But yeah, appreciate your comment. And yes, that's something we'll need to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Right. Well, seeing, hearing nothing else, thank you for your time and attendance and participation in the stakeholder meeting today. Contact information is here. For those that may be on the phone, My email address is Michael, Michael, .odom, DOM, at dnr.ga.gov. And additionally, my phone number is 470-524-0535. It will also be made available at the website address, epd.georgia.gov/georgia-epd-inem-rules-update. Again, we'll continue to accept comments until May 24th, 2023. And we really appreciate your comments and input today. And thanks again for your participation in the Georgia I&M program. Have a good day. Thank you so much.